Have you got his number? I think I have it. Stay to me for those and knock. De vaart ook wat samen doen want wat interviews of table tennis. So you should check that idea. And then you make it easier yourself, stuff like that. And that you know, those say not and that the table tennis can set to go forward because well, you're going to need our social media page for that. They often table tennis. As I said. Als we daarvoor uit hem zien, ja, het is echt wel maar dat zijn de This one. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعين ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا إنه من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وبعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله تعالى وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. I trust everybody is well, inshallah. We make dua Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us in His obedience. And we shukr Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for gathering us on this day that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, khayru yawm tala'ati shams al-Jum'ah. That the best day that the sun is risen on, it is the day of Jum'ah. And on this day, on the previous night after Maghrib, we are encouraged to increase in salawats and salams on the Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, because he says that verily the salawat and the salams are presented to me by two angels. And when the salawat and salams is presented to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he then returns the salam. And this is in the authentic hadith where he says, wa alayka salaman fulanan ibn fulanan ibn fulanan. And he returns the greetings to the people. Sheikh, he returns the greetings to the people where he says, wa alayka salam, and I return to you wa alayka. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then returns, he sends the malaika, wa alayka salam, fulanan ibn fulanan ibn fulanan. And he returns that greetings, inshallah, in person to us, subhanallah. So how blessed are we not to be part of the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Jama'ah, please fill the gaps in front of you, so the brothers come in, they're not inconvenience or disturbance to the other musallis, inshallah. Jama'ah, for the past 6 months, every masjid, every mainstream masjid in our city has been covering events on a global scale. And we've been speaking about every country that atrocities happened in, and we speak about so many other things, but we don't touch our own community. We don't touch what happens in our own backyards and in our streets and on our corners and in front of our doors. Jama'ah, as much as people have been killed on a global scale, internationally, the death toll in our own city rises every weekend, subhanallah. Every weekend we will hear, on a Monday morning, I advise you to put on your radio and listen to the statistics of shootings over the weekends. It is sad that life on our streets has become so cheap that it takes a wrong word or a wrong look or a wrong body action and the person loses his or her life. It is sad that no person touches this topic, and it is sad that nobody wants to go out and fix this problem. We all have short-term answers for this problem. And one of the mistakes that I made, Jama'ah, friendly request, put your phones on silent. It is a distraction for us in front here. Don't leave your phones on loud. Kanala, I'm asking you nicely. Put your phones on silent. And one of the sad things is a mistake that I made, is that we think that to go burn down a house and to take up arms in the street, it is a solution. It is part of a solution. It is not a solution. It is part of a solution. The solution is that when we look at ourselves and our families, what do we want for us and what do we want for our families? And when we get that answer, we must transfer that answer to our neighbors and to those around us, inshallah. Because if I want this for my family, should I not want it for my neighbor also? لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. We cannot restrict and confine these ahadith only to Sharia, only to Deen. The priority of us being friends and brothers and neighbors of each other transcends Sharia. It goes past that point, to the point where even if I don't see you for a couple of days, I must wonder, what has happened to my brother? Why is he not here? Where is he? Is something okay? Is he wrong? Is something wrong with him? Does he need anything? This must be our mindset, our mentality. If I might say, I wasn't here since after Labarang, nobody phoned me. So I realized that van my. Of hulle sê, ek kan maar bly wat is. I'm just joking, I got a few phone calls. Shukran for the concern, brothers, shukran. I appreciate the phone calls en die mense het my nie gemessage nie, maar ek los jou van na die Juma. It is taught to us by psychology and city planning and street planning that when a new city or when a new area is going to be opened, the first thing that they should be building are police stations. That is wrong. By inferring, by saying a police station must be built, you are subliminally, you are telling the people, why are we building the police station here? Because we're going to put criminals here. So you are herding the people into that type of thinking, that type of mentality. I live here, or they live here, or we live here, criminals are going to come here. That's why we need a police station first. In preparing this khutbah Jama'ah, I found so many people. So many people I found, because I wanted to make sure that my facts are in order. I found people who used to live in District 6. I found people who lived in Claremont, Fishhoek, Kalk Bay, Simonstown. There I didn't know if people were Muslim. Just so, by the way, I didn't know. I found out when I came to Masjidur Rasheed dat Muslim mense gebly in Simonstown. I didn't know. Maf. En die Kalk Bay, ek het nie geweet nie. Daar's Muslim mense daar nie. But I did my research. And the one thing that I found in common among all of them there were fewer policemen in the areas back then. In what they call the apartheid system. We know it as the apartheid system. But there were fewer police in the areas. So what was the difference between then, that time, and now? Don't we have more police now? This morning I took a customer to Westlake to stand in law enforcement in the traffic op se karre hierso. I thought it was a roadblock. Ek het amper omgedraai. But I saw a lot of law enforcement and they had a meeting here. And almost, I think 50 cars, if I'm not mistaken. There could be more than 50 that was parked here. So why can't they get the streets right? Why can't they fix the problem if there's so many of them? The problem is self-respect has been ripped away from us. Has been systematically taken out of our makeup, out of our psyche, out of our build-up as people. Back then, when I made a mistake, me, Munir, I was supposed to be here, but I'm not here. I was somewhere else, and somebody told my parents, Munir wasn't playing here. Munir was somewhere else. My parents would sort me out. Isn't it so? Was that not the way? Try it today. But why is that? Where does it come from? It doesn't come from us. It doesn't come from our community. It was brought into our community. It was brought in. Why? Colonial rule. The moment we're going to start realizing that apartheid has never left South Africa, the more united we're going to become. And that is what they fear the most. That is why they flood our areas with alcohol, drugs, gangsterism, and violence. That is why they flood it. Because if these communities come together and say, enough is enough, we've had it now, then nobody can move us. But we don't do that. Our self-respect is only for us and for our families. We don't teach it to our children, to our neighbors' children, and to other children that come there. That was the hikmah. Why I could play by his house and he could play by my house. Because our parents were on the same page. That was the hikmah behind it. Because then they could see, now everything is divorced. Everything is in pockets. Children come home, they don't go home. They go to the aftercare. Now we know, Jama'ah, we're not speaking generalizing. We're speaking about certain events or certain aspects of certain things. But if daddy in the house takes his role properly and lives up to the ayah, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, ku anfusakum wa ahlikum naran, oh you who believe, save yourselves and your families from the fire of Jahannam, then tell me something. Would we still be seeing the same problem outside that we're seeing now? If daddy plays his role, instead of shirking his responsibility, it is the city, it is this, it is that, it is this, it's the imam, the maulana, the sheikh. Same, the poor sheikh, they must get all the blame, all the time. Even if stuff go wrong outside in the street, it's us, it's our fault also. It's very sheikh. The sheikh, the imam, the maulana, the teacher. But daddy doesn't fulfill his responsibility. So whose fault is it? Nobody wants to say it's daddy's fault. Because daddy's going to say somebody else, and somebody else, and somebody else. But Allah speaks to daddy in the Quran. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, Ku anfusakum wa ahlikum naran. Save yourselves and your family. Meaning, if you say save yourself, then you must be a righteous person. You must lead by example. Kullukum ra'in famas'ulun an ra'iyati. That all of you are shepherds and you're responsible for your flock. But jama'ah, outside there, subhanallah, our children are dying by the hundreds and nobody bats an eyelid. Why? Because we are expendable waste for the grand scheme of things. We are expendable. Those people that's playing around with us like pawns in a game, they divide us. Fight for land. Fight for your heritage. Fight for your backyard dwellers. Fight for your own name. Fight for this, fight for that. Meanwhile, the top structure, they don't care. We bring down the market value of your area. We sell your area for cheap. We keep on making money, and we keep on making money, and we keep on making money. There's a guy that I would love the youngsters to inshallah, if you have the time, go onto your devices, and you go have listen to him. His name is Patrick. He's from an Iranian background. He's a Christian guy. But if you listen to him, you will understand a lot of things that's happening in the world today. Who can point out to me, or somebody stand up and tell me, do you find a racist billionaire amongst each other? Racism practice amongst billionaires. You don't find it. Do you know why you don't find it? Because their objective isn't to see the color of our skin. Our objective is to see the color of our skin, yes. They bring that into our mentality, into our minds. A person is to black, a person is to white, a person is to colored. They bring that to us, yes. So as long as we have a colored area, and a black area, and a white area, we will always be divided. Always. We need to unify Jama'ah. Our children are paying the price because of our negligence. And us taking care of this pocket here, our children are paying that price. One of the first people I spoke to this morning, he says that one day there was a gang fight. And a lady wanted to cross the road. This happened in District 6, he says. The lady wanted to cross the road. And when that lady put her foot in the road to cross the road, the gang fight stopped until she was away from the danger. Can you imagine that sight? Can you imagine that? Gangsters. For us, gangsters are almost not people. We don't treat them like people. But that lady wanted to cross the road and they stopped fighting. Do you know why? They still had self-respect. The flooding of alcohol and drugs into our societies is not just by happening. It is put there for a reason. It's put there to dehumanize us. So that when they hear the statistics of people being killed on the Cape Flats, it doesn't even bother them. It doesn't even 5 people got killed in Harare. 3 people got killed in Sewings. 4 people got killed in Lavendale. That doesn't even faze them. Because they dehumanize us. Because what do they make? What does the alcohol and the drugs do to us? It robs us of our humanity. That is why, in the time of lockdown, and they banned alcohol sales. Do you remember what happened in the trauma units, trauma facilities? The people, they never had work. Do you remember that? In the trauma units, the people never had work because there was no sale of alcohol on the road. Now, what does that tell you? What is the source of all those problems? What does that tell you? Allah says to us in the Quran, إِنَّمَا الْخَمْرُ وَالْمَيْسِرُ. That very alcohol and gambling and drugs and intoxicants, what is that? رِجَسُ مِنْ عَمَلِ الشَّيْطَانِ فَاجْتَنِبُوهُ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. These are all nudges of the shaitan, not shaitan's handiwork. It is the nudges of shaitan. فَاجْتَنِبُوهُ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. Stay clear away from that, far away from it, لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. That you may be successful. Not pious or righteous, successful. These are all warnings Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us. But do we listen? No, we don't listen. Why don't we listen? Because you're not attached to the book of Allah. That's why. If we must come back to the book of Allah, Jama'ah, many of our problems will be solved. Many. Not all, many. Because for us to solve problems, we must be man enough and big enough to say, I made a mistake, I am wrong. And that's not happening anymore. People are not man enough to say anymore, I made a mistake. I was wrong. There's no men anymore to say things like that. Now we have, like my daddy always say, take a sample from a man, because he blames everybody else instead of taking responsibility. He don't take responsibility anymore. I saw your son running with a gun. Not my son, somebody else's son. Here's the photo. Yeah, well, that's what's happening. We want to clean up our streets. Crime is wrong until you know the criminal. Gender-based violence is wrong until you know the perpetrator of the gender-based violence. Drugs is wrong until you know the merchant. Or until you know the person who's using the drugs. Stealing is wrong until you know the person who's stealing the stuff. We need to get back our humanity, Jama'ah. And the only way to get back our humanity is through education. This was the one thing that all these phone calls this morning had in common. Fewer police, more spirituality. All the elders told me exactly the same thing over the phone. The people of that back then, they were more spiritual. Meaning, they stuck to their religion. Whether it was Islam, Christianity, Judaism, they stuck to it. They had patience. They knew if there wasn't today, inshallah, tomorrow there will be. This is what we're lacking. We are lacking the ability to take things back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what we are lacking in our communities. We are lacking the ability to attribute good to Allah. We are lacking the ability to do what? To say that person who comes, even disguised as a friend, he's coming to create unity and disunity, to create disunity and disruption and discord among us. He's part of the army of shaitan. We're not man enough to say this anymore. What does this have to do with all the things out there? All these points I'm making are points that are dividing our ummah, are dividing our communities. But are we big enough to admit it? Are we big enough to work hard for change? Are we big enough to say, what can I do to make things better? These are questions only you can answer. I can't answer them. Jama'ah, our children are so valuable to us that these people have invested so much in corrupting them that they even make the eligible age for you to go to hard time, to do hard time, that is even raised now. So that is why gang bosses ask children to do all the shooting. Van hy homself is te bang vir die tronk. Now he send the child to shoot. He send children. They get them hooked on all types of drugs. Then for a 50 rand or 100 rand or 300 rand, that's what your life is worth. That's what your life is worth. And what happens now? He takes your life, gone. His life is just destroyed. Not you, no. I mean now, make it Janie, broke your book. Jy verkoop vrugte en groente. But his life is destroyed. Along with your life, your family, everything is pulled apart. Why? Because of substance abuse. You know, the other day, I had a customer. And this customer was looking to buy alcohol. They rented the house in Fresnay. Did you know, Fresnay, Camps Bay, Upper Sea Point, there are no off sales there. You can't purchase alcohol there. You must go to a shop which is far away from there. The closest you can get is either in the promenade or in the waterfront. There are no alcohol off sales in those areas. Constantia the same. But here by us, they make the beer cheaper than the bread. So before he buys the bread, he'll buy a beer. And the children at home hungry, they're crying. Jama'ah, self-respect. And this you can encourage our youngsters of the Jama'ah. We've got a massive gap between our youngsters and our elders. A massive gap. And because they don't communicate with each other. The youngster think to stand up in front, to zullen sê in Afrikaans, boast in boast met 'n groot man. That is self-respect. That is being a man. That's not being a man, you're rude. That's not being a man. But because he sees his father do it, he also wants to do it now. We have robbed our children from self-respect. The way we talk to each other, that's what's taking the self-respect away from them also. The way we deal with each other is taking that away from them also. So that's why the gap is always increasing. That's why I encourage our youngsters. Al-baraka fi akabirikum. That the blessings of Allah will be found in our elders. And when it was time for change,
What did Rasulullah say about them when it was time to change? Nasarani ash-shabab. That the youth, they helped me when it came time for change. So we need to bring the two together. And when bringing the two together, that is going to be the success of our ummah, inshallah. We must bring the two together because that was the success back then. They never worried about what religion you followed, what your father had, or who your family was. The only time they ask you about your family is when you come to get married. That's the only time. But other than that, they would look after you. Your family was their family and vice versa. My family was their family and vice versa. Jama'ah, to curb this problem that we have with losing our kids every weekend, every day, every hour, it's not an easy road. And like I said the last time, we can go. We know where they are. We know what they do, what they do. We know what to do with them. But that's the short-term solution. The solution that we must find is a long-term, more effective solution. And that is to bring self-respect back. And how do we get that? First thing is, greet one another. That's one of the advices Rasulullah ﷺ taught to us. Just greet someone properly. Shake his hand. Not greet and you look that way. The person standing here, you greet and you look the other way. No. You greet, you hold it. And if somebody's talking to you, hold his hand, you tell him just wait. And when it's finished, and now you turn, you greet the person. This is sunnah. This is the sunnah of Rasulullah ﷺ. Greet and speak to someone the way you want somebody to speak to you. Deal with someone the way somebody to deal with you. This is how, but not, subhanAllah, not the way we're going on now. The way we're going on now, we're losing each other. And that's why we're losing our children. Jama'ah, the message today is self-respect must come back to us so that we can impart it onto our children. Self-respect is going to save us and save our communities. These young men, subhanAllah, they are directionless. And if you harness that power, if you harness that ability, you will be surprised to see what the young man is on the other end. That is why the time that I was teaching in Paulsmoor, that young man who sat in front of me, I think to myself, what are you doing here? You don't belong here. What is coming out of your mouth? You don't belong in this place. You're not supposed to be here. I was teaching them Quran. I was teaching them to read Quran, how to baca surat. And this boy tells me, I said to him, go to the last place that you remember. Because I'm one of the teachers, I don't believe if a child comes to you for the first time to learn, I'm one of the people that don't believe put him back to the beginning again. That disrupts everything about the child. You take him to the last point. What is the last work you remember? And we work from there, inshallah. So I said to him, take me to the last lesson that you did. He said to me, I finished that already. So this boy was a hafidh of the Quran. Hafidh of the Quran. One bad decision with one bad group of people. Gone. Everything. Gone. The other one, his grandfather was an imam in Langa. I had the honor of meeting his grandfather, Imam Dawood Lobi, rahimahullah. I don't know if anybody knows him. He was one of the students of Imam Abdullah Harun, rahimahullah, Shaheed Imam Abdullah Harun. Imam Dawood Lobi worked very closely with Imam Abdullah Harun, rahimahumullah, in the Langa townships. And that was his grandson that I was busy with in Paulsmoor. And I said to him, do you think your grandfather would be happy with you here? And he just started crying. He says, I know this. But when my grandmother said to me, don't get in the car, I didn't listen. Jama'ah, our children are valuable to us. We don't see their value. But those people outside who want to corrupt them, they see their value. Because that's why they're working so hard on corrupting them. They see that these young men and these young women, if they live to their full potential, wallahi, they have the ability to change the entire world around them. But we need to realize that. And the only way that we're going to realize that is to be man enough to say, how can I fix things and how can I make things better? How can I be the change that I want them to be? And only a man can do that. Not somebody complain and moan the whole time. And that is why at this masjid, we don't believe in pushing children away. We don't believe in, if the children is running and playing, to stop them from running and playing. We don't believe, and this is now not, if a child comes in here with no face on his head, we don't tell them, go put the kufiya on. I sometimes lead salah with no face on my head. Me, the imam. Why? To show them this place is open for you. Don't let people chase you away. That young man that you chased away yesterday, he could be the change the Ummah is waiting for. But because you were narrow-minded, you were short-sighted, you pushed him away from the house of Allah and he became something else outside. Sometimes I sit, and that's why sometimes I don't dress like this. I see how people treat other young boys. His pants is maybe hanging down. They tell him, Allah sê gelukkig met jou nie van die jy aantrek. Was Allah ever worried about fashion? Did Allah ever ask you? Did Allah ever tell us, dress a certain way? No. We need our young kids to come back to us. We need our children. We need our youth. But we must also be the change, Jama'ah. There's this incident I spoke about last night. And it's something that actually disturbed me. And we must make dua, Jama'ah, what I'm about to tell you. Make dua that it does not ever reach the Steenberg and retreat area. If it comes here, you will not be able to stop it. I spoke to Peter Fuad last night. And he tells me that they were busy with a project in Mitchell's Plain Town Center. And there's a company. Ek het nie gehulle so kwam mense the company's name. Hulle so many maar. Ek het nie gehulle. Kom ons doen community service. Ek het nie baie tyd op my hande nie. But this company provide syringes for drug users. Now listen to this mentality. Listen to this mentality. They provide syringes to addicts, to drug users. And then what they do is they give you the syringe with your fix of unga, whatever, your mandrakes, whatever you want to use in there. Then they stand there and they wait. The police and the law enforcement is standing there, watching them use. And where they go buy it also. They're standing there watching all this happening. And when they finish with that syringe, they take it off them, they put it in a disposable bag so that they can go dispose of that in a proper way. So that nobody else can take that syringe and develop either TB or AIDS. Did I believe in it out of what? If alles reg, niks uitgelos nie. You are creating a nation of addicts. Addicts. A community of addicts. Why? To promote your product. The lesser of two evils. We don't want AIDS and TB, so it's fine. We're going to give you the syringe, stick it in here, and then when we finish, we'll take the syringe from you and we'll dispose of it properly. Now I see the confusion on all your faces. But therefore, I had to explain to me thrice last night because I couldn't understand it. You had to take me point by point because I couldn't understand the mentality of creating a community of addicts so that you save somebody else from the HIV and the TB. Now, if it's going to work in Mitchell's Plain, Jama'ah, if it's going to work with that large numbers, what do you think is going to happen to the smaller areas like Lavendale, Steenberg, Retreat, Pontyville, Hanover Park, Menenberg, Ocean View? What do you think is going to happen there? What do you think is going to happen? Obviously, it's going to spread. And obviously, it's going to create a bigger problem. But this is what? For the greater good. Jama'ah, no politician is interested in us. Don't believe the Patriotic Alliance. Don't believe the NCC. Don't believe the ANC. Especially don't believe the DA. Don't believe the EFF. They're not interested in any one of you sitting here. Anyone. The only people that are going to save you and your family are you yourselves as the community. No one else. And if we're not going to come together as a community, not only are we going to fail, we're going to fail on them also. Because they're going to inherit every bad baggage that we have. They're going to inherit every single thing. And they're going to say, my father was there. My grandfather was there. My uncle was there. They did nothing. They left this for us. Now we must fix it. Or we can stand up and we can say, it's time for us to be the change. Both balls are in our court. And both options that we're going to do, inshallah, both options is going to have an effect on our children. But you are going to be able to decide. Is my child going to praise me for being the change? Or is my child going to blame me for causing all this that we're seeing outside here? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect our youth. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us leaders that are worthy of the word leader. And not give us people that only there for their pockets, to line their pockets, inshallah. Jama'ah, inshallah today, we will make kunut in the second rak'at of Jum'ah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rid our community of gangsterism, of drugs, of guns. The problem in the community, Jama'ah, I'm going to end over this point, inshallah. The problem in our community is not guns. The problem in our community is the accessibility to illegal guns. That is the problem. And the only way to fight this problem is for every one of you that's sitting here to arm yourselves. Arm yourselves. So when they come in your house, they're going to know, I'm going to walk in, but I'm going to crawl out. Their choice. And then what we do is, we come together as communities, plural, come together and put pressure on our politicians to prove their worth. If they're really in a democracy, prove your worth. Change our gun laws the way it's supposed to be back then. Back then, if I find you on my property, you don't belong there, I shoot you, it's your own fault. Nowadays, the man can be in your house and you can do nothing to him. If he turns his back on you and you shoot him in your own house, Jama'ah, he came to break into your house, he's in your property, your family, your wife and your children is there. He turns his back and you shoot him, you go to jail because that man was not an immediate threat to you. So we need to put pressure on our politicians. Get rid of that stupid that's sitting there as Minister of Police. Get rid of him. Because he himself can't even write his own name properly. Now I'm sick of this. I'm sick of it. Wallahi, I'm sick of this. What options do we have? They say that they want South Africa to be gun-free. Do you know what happens if we're a gun-free society? You are unarmed against a criminal. You are unarmed against a criminal. Jama'ah, arm yourselves, but do it legally. Moenie nog het illegal kan score by die kan sê ek het gesê nie, kan hulle. Ek sê meneer as op die recording daar gaan kyk daar so ek het gesê hulle moenie koop daai nie. Go the legal way and put pressure on every politician that you know. Tell them we want this thing to be amended. Sign up with there's a Afrikaner organization. They sporting club. They are fighting that you and I can own firearms to protect ourselves. No? You want to be like a Sahaba? Learn to fight. Learn to arm yourself. Learn to use the firearms. I learned Quran, and my friend is always with me. And ask anyone who knows me here in this masjid. Anyone who knows me here. I teach my children the same thing. All my children. My daughter is 14 years old. She can use a firearm. My children, they can use firearms. If you are going to sit here thinking, you say, Ya Allah, and that man come with a gun, you'll see each other in Jannah. Jama'ah, this is a serious thing. Arm yourselves. This is the final point I'm leaving you on. I'm not a jihadist. I'm not preaching vigilantism. I'm not preaching mob violence. I'm preaching looking after your family, protecting your family. Make it known. You come into my property, two things. You either stay here, under the ground, or you crawl out. One of the two. Your choice. But don't come in here again. Inshallah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us. Sheikh, you going to lead salah for us? Inshallah. We're going to ask Sheikh to lead salah for us, inshallah, and Sheikh will make kunut in the second rak'at for us, inshallah. Are there any announcements? I haven't received any announcements. No, there are no announcements, alhamdulillah. So all those who are celebrating birthdays, inshallah, Allah grant you lots of khairat and hasana, open all the doors of barakah for you and afiyah. Those of us who are sick, Allah grant us shifa and kamilan. Those who are passed on, Allah grant them jannatul firdaus. And also last week's collection was 3,500 rand. May Allah bless each and every one of you. All those who will give, even if it's a 2 rand, wallahi, there's barakah in the 2 rand. If it's a 5 rand, there's barakah in the 5 rand. For wallahi, man jaa bil hasana falahu ashru amthaliha. Whoever comes with one act of goodness, Allah multiplies it by 10 jama'ah. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to continue to bless all of us, keep us safe, protect our children, inshallah. And remember what I said at the end. Start arming yourselves. Learn how to use that firearm. Learn how to protect yourself. But Hussein, you got room for students there by you? Hussein is also here, inshallah. Hussein can also teach you. Learn how to protect yourselves. When you see youngsters on the road, jama'ah, address them properly. Talk to them. Encourage them. Try to get them off the street. There's a brothers here from Pelican Park in Jamaat. Young guys, where are they? They're sitting here. Young boys in Jamaat. I'm not saying that everybody must do this. Everybody's got a different calling. But try to look to the positive. Try to look at the strength of the youngster. And try to tap into that strength, inshallah, bidnillahi ta'ala. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless each and every one of us. Subhanallah bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Allahu Akbar. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا إنه من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وبعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله تعالى وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. أيها الأحبة الكرام فإني أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله فقد قال الله في القرآن الكريم بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا قوا أنفسكم وأهليكم نارا صدق الله العظيم. وقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في حديث عندما يقول كلكم راء فمسؤول عن رعيته. بارك الله لي ولكم في القرآن الكريم ونفعنا بآيات وذكر الحكيم. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم ولوالدي ولوالديكم ولسائر المسلمين من كل ذنب فاستغفروا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وبعد. قال الله في القرآن الكريم بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. وقال الله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. وقال الله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما صدق الله العظيم. وقال الله في القرآن الكريم بنسبة صلوات على نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم عندما يقول إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. وارض الله الخلفاء الأربعة أبو بكر وعمر وعثمان وعلي وعن بقية الصحابة أجمعين. اللهم انصر المجاهدين في كل مكان، اللهم انصر المجاهدين في كل مكان، اللهم انصر المجاهدين في كل مكان. اللهم أصلح ذات بينهم، اللهم أصلح ذات بينهم، اللهم أصلح ذات بينهم. اللهم احفظنا واحفظ أولادنا، اللهم احفظ أولادنا، اللهم احفظ أولادنا، اللهم احفظ شبابنا، اللهم احفظ شبابنا، اللهم احفظ شبابنا. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وادخلنا الجنة مع الأبرار يا عزيز يا غفار يا رب العالمين. عباد الله رحمكم الله، إن الله يأمركم بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله يذكركم وادعوه يستجيب لكم ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون. أقيموا الصلاة. Jabbar, please move forward inshallah. Don't complete the saf in front of you. Don't complete the saf until the saf in front of you is not full. Okay. The qunut in the second rak'ah inshallah.
شيخنا شوف كيف الأحسن حقا يستاذك إن شاء الله. والله أحسن.
أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله. صلى الله عليه وسلم. الله الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. يا أيها الذين آمنوا قوا أنفسكم وأهليكم نارا وقودها الناس والحجارة عليها ملائكة غلاظ شديد لا يعصون الله ما أمرهم ويفعلون ما يؤمرون. يا أيها الذين كفروا لا تعتذروا اليوم إنما تجزون ما كنتم تعملون. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
إذا زلزلت الأرض زلزالها وأخرجت الأرض أثقالها وقال الإنسان ما لها يومئذ تحدث أخبارها بأن ربك أوحى لها يومئذ يصدر الناس أشتاتا ليروا أعمالهم فمن يعمل مثقال ذرة خيرا يره ومن يعمل مثقال ذرة شرا يره. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وآفنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا شر ما قضيت فإنك تقضي ولا يقضى عليك إنه لا يذل من واليت ولا يعز من آديت باركت ربنا وتعاليت فلك الحمد على ما قضيت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. اللهم انصر المسلمين في فلسطين وانصر المسلمين في غزة. اللهم انصر المسلمين والمجاهدين في كل مكان. اللهم احفظنا واحفظ أولادنا واحفظ شبابنا واحفظ بيوتنا. اللهم اجعل هذا مسجدا مباركا. اللهم ارحمنا بالقرآن العظيم واجعله لنا إماما ونورا وهدى ورحمة. اللهم ذكرنا منه ما نسينا وعلمنا منه ما جهلنا وارزقنا تلاوته آناء الليل وطرف النهار. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وأدخلنا الجنة مع الأبرار يا عزيز يا غفار يا رب العالمين. رب اغفر وارحم وأنت خير الراحمين. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. استغفر العظيم استغفر العظيم استغفر العظيم وتم رحيم الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ونتوب إليك ونسألك توبة ومغفرة إنه هو التواب الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم أنت السلام وأمنك السلام وإليك السلام حين ربنا بالسلام وأدخلنا الجنة رحمتك دار السلام. تبارك ربنا تعاليت يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. اللهم اغفر لنا ولوالدينا ولأستاذنا ولجميع المسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم انصر المسلمين في كل مكان. اللهم احفظنا واحفظ أولادنا واحفظ شبابنا. اللهم احفظنا واحفظ أولادنا واحفظ شبابنا. اللهم احفظنا واحفظ أولادنا واحفظ شبابنا. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وأدخلنا الجنة مع الأبرار يا عزيز يا غفار يا رب العالمين. اللهم أجنا من النار. اللهم أجنا من النار. اللهم أجنا من النار. اللهم افتح لنا بالخير واختم لنا بالخير واجعل واكب أمورنا بالخير. بيدك الخير والعافية إنك على كل شيء قدير. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وسلم وبارك وسلم بفضلك نوعا فيها سبحانك اللهم وتحية فيها سلام وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.
والله كيف الحل؟ معلش